down here to talk to you guys today. We have some visual aids. Should be fun. Okay, so today the gospel is all about the Transfiguration, when Jesus goes up on the mountaintop and is illuminated by this bright light. And something that has always fascinated me about the Transfiguration is the fact that if you are an Orthodox Christian, this is a major church holiday. In fact, it's a celebration for the entire week. Okay, it's a big deal in the Orthodox Church. In fact, the holiday is as important to them as Easter. But if you're a Protestant like us, a Lutheran like us, this is just like another day in the office. I mean, we don't even take communion on this day. Okay? And so what has always kind of, for me, fascinated me is why? Right? We're all on the same team. Orthodox Christians worship the same God. They believe Jesus is Christ, right? Messiah. He's the Son of God. Okay? They read the same Bible as us. They read the same gospel as us. So why do they look at this gospel of the Transfiguration, make a really big deal out of it, and why do we not do that as Protestants? Okay, so what we're going to do today, it's part educational and part message. We're going to talk about why Orthodox Christians focus so heavily on the Transfiguration. And I know some of you are like, oh, this is going to be like a boring history lesson. Okay, but I hope it's interesting. When you see how they think, I'll try and make it fun. When you see how they think about this, it's sort of like looking in a mirror. You're going to actually understand a little bit more about yourself and your own Lutheran belief system as well. And then you're going to see some parallels, things they do that you already probably do in your faith life. And there's one thing at the very end, I'll tell you what it is, something that you've been doing here for decades at St. Luke, I bet you don't even know it, that is incredibly Orthodox. Okay, it's not Lutheran at all. All right, but we'll get to that at the end. Okay, so stay tuned. All right, so I'm just going to move this so I don't hit it and fall over. Okay. All right. All right, so first we're going to start off with a down and dirty review of what do Lutherans believe, okay? So fundamentally, what do we believe? We're going all the way back to Martin Luther, right, in the 1500s. What did he want us to believe, okay? So Lutherans, we believe in what is called the penal substitution theory of atonement. Some of your eyes were like, whoa, that's a lot of words. Okay, but it's easy, guys. You get this because you say the words every week in church. And the penal substitution theory of atonement goes like this. I am in bondage to sin, and I cannot free myself. Right? And then there's some more words. And then, for the sake of your Son, Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. And this theory goes like this. You, every single one of you, are a sinner. You sin. And you are in a jailhouse of sin. You cannot get out of the jail. The bars are sin. And nothing, and absolutely nothing you do will ever get you out of the jailhouse of sin. You can be a really good guy. Doesn't matter. You're a sinner. Okay? You can say, oh, I'm really sorry. Doesn't matter. Doesn't get you out of being a sinner. You can be really nice. Doesn't matter. You're still a sinner. Do we understand? We're always in the jailhouse of sin. There is one thing that gets us out of the jailhouse of sin, and that is Jesus Christ. Exactly, right? He comes to us. We put our faith in Jesus Christ. We are saved through grace, right? He has mercy on us, and he breaks us out of the jailhouse of sin. And he does that, there's the substitution portion of the theory, by taking our place on the cross, suffering and dying on the cross for us, which allows us to enter the kingdom of heaven as people who are saved, okay, children of God. Does everybody, we understand that? It's really important to understand that there is nothing you can personally do as a sinner, okay? You are always a sinner in a Protestant system of faith, okay? One thing people get a little bit sometimes misunderstood with this is, let's say, we'll take Jay. We're going to pick on Jay, okay? Let's say Jay, today he did the forgiveness of sins, and Jay says, I'm going to be really good this week, okay? So Jay makes good choices this week, and theoretically, okay, you don't sin for the rest of the week. Congratulations, you were a goody two-shoes. Okay, so next Saturday evening rolls around, and Jay's thinking to himself, okay, this is great. I didn't sin this week. So that means I don't have to get to church on time tomorrow, and I can skip the forgiveness of sins portion at the beginning because I don't need it. I didn't sin, correct? That's what you're thinking. That's great. You can sleep in, all right? But not so fast, Jay, because you're a Lutheran, all right? And Martin Luther is clear on this. As Lutherans, we believe that the original sin committed by Adam and Eve in the garden, that has been passed down over the generations to all of us, and we continue to pass it on to our children. So even though you may not have sinned, you got to pay for Adam and Eve's sin. So you still, you got to show up to church on time next week, and you still have to ask for forgiveness of sins. Even though you might personally not have sinned, you're still a sinner because you're paying for everybody else's sin. Important to understand with this theory is three things. One, it's incredibly static. As Protestants, we are stuck in the jail cell. Some theologians describe this as a merry-go-round. You're on a merry-go-round of sin. You never get off of it. The only thing that can break you free is Jesus, right? So you just go around and around and around, right? From Sunday to Sunday, you ask for forgiveness, you go back out, right? Doesn't matter, you're always a sinner, so you just keep on the merry-go-round. It's static. And number two is the fact that you can never be God. There's a gigantic chasm between you and God, right? Because you're a sinner. God must come to you. You cannot go to him. All right? So you must sit in the jailhouse and put your faith in Christ, and he will come to you, right? And through his mercy, he's the way, the truth, and the light, he will break you free. And the final aspect that's important to understand, and this is Martin Luther's own words, is your powerlessness to impact your own life. Your choices don't matter. And I know that's hard to understand, but he writes about this in The Slavery of the Will. All right, published in 1525. You have no willpower. You're always a sinner, okay? It doesn't matter what choices you make, okay? Now, can you sanctify yourself through sanctification and do good things? Absolutely. And when you do that, you're thanking God for saving you. But that doesn't impact the fact that you remain a sinner and are always in need of salvation, okay? That's a down and dirty sort of review of a Protestant faith system and a Lutheran faith system. Okay, now with that in mind, we're going to switch gears and talk about Orthodox Christians, okay? Now remember, same Bible, same God, same Bible stories. They just look at it a little differently. So let's start with the book of Genesis. Adam and Eve commit the original sin. But here's the first difference. An Orthodox Christian does not believe that that original sin gets passed down over the generations, okay? So that's Adam and Eve's problem. That's their sin. That's not your sin. So when the baby is born, it's a clean slate for them. And they believe that humans are inclined to sin. You're inclined to sin, but it doesn't mean you necessarily will sin. For an Orthodox Christian, sin is a choice. Remember, for us, it's inherited. We are always sinners. But for an Orthodox Christian, sin is a choice. And you can make a choice in your life on whether to sin or not sin. And they call this the tug of war between my divine will and my human will. That sounds complicated. It's easy. You've all seen this visualized in movies and TV. Who has ever seen where they have the little angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder? Have we all seen that, right? And the angel is your divine will telling you to do good things, and the devil on the other shoulder is telling you to sin, okay? And they believe this is this tug of war between your divine will, which is telling you follow Christ, model your life after Christ, do good things, make good choices, and your human will, which is the devil saying sin. That makes sense? Okay, and unlike Protestants, where we describe our faith system as a merry-go-round, we can never escape the merry-go-round, right? They have an analogy for their faith, and it's a ladder, all right? So we got my ladder here, which we're going to set up, all right, so make this a little bit easier, okay? This is their faith system as Orthodox Christians. Okay, now up here, God. Down here, I know, I just put like straw all over the floor. I am so this came out of the barn. All right. Down here, you got humans. Okay, us. Which way do you think you want to go on the ladder? Up. Wait, what does the ladder look like that resembles something from our gospel lesson today? A mountain, right? We want to go up the mountain. So we got God up here, and we're down here. Okay, and so for an Orthodox Christian, they believe that if I make good choices in life, right, I choose to follow the angel on my shoulder rather than the devil, I climb the ladder to get close to God. All right, do you see how this is very different from your faith system as a Lutheran? Because if you remember, can we ever get to God? No, he has to do what? He has to come to us through our faith, right? Because we're stuck in the jailhouse of Sin, you guys got it. Okay, so they believe it's different, right? I can make personal choices here, right? So if I do good things, I'm nice, I'm generous, right? I'm modeling my life after Christ, I start climbing the rungs of the ladder, right? Oh, I sinned. Okay, now I'm going back down. So life is constantly for them going up and down a ladder, okay? But if they're good and they model themselves after Christ, right? Eventually they make enough good choices that you get to the very top of the ladder. I'm going to try not to fall, otherwise that's going to be the fall from grace, okay? And now we're up top here and I'm with God. They call this union with God. They've reached this state of union with God. And they achieve this semi-divine state. And when that happens, their light shines forth across the world. What does that sound like? The Transfiguration, right? Exactly what we read about in the gospel today. And when their light shines forth, I'll try not to blind you. We'll blind YouTube. Okay, there we go, right? There it is. There's the light. Okay. Okay? This is a physical incarnation of God's love. And they spread it to the entire world. And this is how they believe you can make the world a better place. By being a good person, modeling yourself after Christ, right? And when you get to the top, this union with God, you shine your light on the world and you make it a better place. This is why the Transfiguration is such a big deal for Orthodox Christians. Because it's the model for what they need to do here on earth, okay? Their idea is that Jesus was human, he went to the top of the mountaintop, he did good things, and then his light, his love, God's love shone forth from him and spread to the whole world. And they believe they can do it too, through personal choices and making good choices in life. And the reason you don't make a big deal out of it is because it goes against everything you know in the penal substitution theory of sin, of atonement, right? You can't go on top of the mountain. You can't be God. You don't have an inner light. You have to wait for God to come to you and free you from the sin. All right? Now, why am I telling you all this? Why am I talking about Orthodox theology here in a Lutheran church? Because how much of this stuff that I just spoke about, how much of it do you already incorporate into your own individual spiritual and faith system? I bet you if you're really honest, you already do. If I went up and asked you guys, like, hey, do you see your faith system as a merry-go-round or a jailhouse? Or do you see it as a ladder where you're establishing a relationship with God? A lot of you are going to say it's a ladder. In fact, lots of Christians do, not just Orthodox Christians. Okay, and if I said, hey, do you believe that you can make good choices in life and bad choices in life, and that can impact your life and bring you closer to God? I can guarantee you that almost everybody is going to say the same thing. When you do good things, you're generous, you're compassionate, you're modeling your life after Christ, do you feel this sense of inner spiritual fulfillment? Do you feel closer to God? I know I do, right? Is that a Lutheran concept? No, it's not. It's an Orthodox concept. But you already incorporate it into your faith life. And do you feel this tug of war between like the angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other shoulder in life? Of course. All of us do. Do you feel that your choices impact your life? Of course you do. Again, not a Lutheran concept, an Orthodox concept. So I can guarantee for many of you, you already, despite being Lutheran, incorporate this type of stuff into your spiritual life. All right? And here's the take-home message. All of us come to God, okay, in the privacy of our own domestic sanctuary, our homes. We come to God and we establish a relationship and we communicate with him in ways and through methods that are not always going to be in line with what we learned in catechism or what we learned in Sunday school or what we learned in church. And that's been going on for 2,000 years. We all do that because your relationship with the divine is an individualized, personalized relationship. Okay? When you join a church and you become, say, a card-carrying Lutheran or a card-carrying Catholic, they give you a spiritual toolkit. And they say, here's the tools you use to access divine power, to talk to God, to have a relationship with God. And like any tradesman or craftsman, right, you start using the tools. But what happens sometimes? The tool doesn't work for you, right? You're like, this doesn't fit my hand. I can't work with this tool. So you go down the street and you talk to Joe and you're like, hey, Joe, can I look inside your spiritual toolkit? And Joe's like, yeah, I got a ladder. And you're like, hey, I might borrow that ladder, right? Because the end state isn't to be a Lutheran, Catholic, Presbyterian, Anglican, Orthodox. The end state is to have a relationship with God. And it's like the Nike commercial. You just do it, right? You use whatever tools you need to get there. to establish that relationship. And all of us are going to do it in our own individualized, personalized fashion. So for some of us, we like the latter. Others of you like the merry-go-round. It's okay. Does that make you less of a Lutheran? No. It just makes you more Christian, right? The end state is to follow Christ. You do what you got to do that. And you incorporate whatever tools you need to get there. Okay? I guarantee a lot of this stuff you already incorporate into your faith journey. Be careful of being brand myopic with faith. What do I mean by that? Where we get so obsessed about the team, right, that's on our t-shirt. We get really obsessed about what denomination I am. And you got to remember, these are artificial classifications that we, the humans, came up with, not Jesus. He doesn't talk about Lutherans or Anglicans, Presbyterians, Orthodox, Catholics. We did that, right, to come up with little spiritual toolkits to help you access God. Don't become brand myopic. Because I see a lot of people in some of these denominations who will tell me that this is something we do and it's very traditional for a Baptist church or very traditional for a Methodist church. And I'll tell you, I listen to it, I'll listen to their services, and they're talking about stuff that in some cases it's a Baptist church talking about Catholic concepts or Orthodox concepts. And I'm chuckling to myself, I'm like, I don't think they know. They're speaking from a pulpit of misinformation. And they don't know. And one of the reasons is because in the 21st century, the boundaries and barriers between all these denominations are breaking down. And with the internet and the free flow of ideas, we're assimilating a lot of different thoughts and processes and ways of thinking about faith from a lot of other denominations. And we're incorporating into our own faith styles. Okay? Case in point. Okay, I'll conclude it here. And this is the part that I think you'll find most interesting. Sylvia, what song did you play for the postlude? This Little Light of Mine, okay? Now, I went to the preschool here in the 90s. Darla Robinson was the teacher. She taught us This Little Light of Mine, and you played the piano. And in fact, I remember there was like little hand motions with it, like, don't hide your light under a bushel, right? Like, let this little light of mine. So this church has been teaching This Little Light of Mine for decades to generations of kids, okay? Is it a traditional Lutheran hymn? No, not at all. In fact, it's very Orthodox. Okay? It originated with monks in the East. They would chant this on mountaintops. This little light of mine, let it shine. What does that sound like? The Transfiguration, right? In fact, there's a verse in the song where it says, God gave me the power divine to let my little light shine. There's nothing Lutheran about that. Martin Luther would roll over in his grave. He'd be like, you got to be kidding me. You don't have any divine power, and you certainly don't have any inner light. All right? And yet, we've been teaching it here. We've been playing it here, right, for decades. Why? Well, one, it's a really catchy song. It's just a good song, right? But also, it tells us something that is more important than just being a Lutheran. It tells us an inherent truth about ourselves. It says, yes, you do have an inner value. You have inner light, and you can let it shine. You can spread God's love. Is it Lutheran? No. A traditional Lutheran hymn is A Mighty Fortress is My God. Mind you, sung in the original German. Unsere Gott wohnte wach, right? Imagine the little kids down at the preschool trying to sing that one. I could just see the Jesses trying to teach that. Okay? No, we teach little kids a little light of mine because we know it's truth. It may not be Lutheran, but it doesn't make it any less true. And isn't that half the reason you get in the faith game to begin with? To seek the way, the light, and the truth, which is Jesus Christ. So I guess after all, there's nothing wrong with here in a Lutheran church, even though Dr. Luther might be glaring down at us, to let our little light shine. Amen.